Today I am going to try to build an adapter to convert my downhill skis to backcountry Alpine touring skis, and if I succeed I'm going to save myself about $500. So let's see how it goes. I am just set up right here on my porch. It's a pretty quick project, so I just brought everything out here. I'm not too worried about getting cold. This shouldn't take very long. I've got my ski with the binding so I can kind of dry fit everything. Got my boot over there, and I got some tools set up, so let's get started. I'm gonna get started here by tracing my ski boot onto this 1/2 inch piece of plywood. And this part of the project you do want to make sure you're pretty exact. It's most important that the very tip of your tracing and the very heel of your tracing be accurate, and that the length of your piece of wood that you cut out is the exact same length as your boot, because otherwise you're going to end up having to adjust your bindings every time you put the adapters in and out. So I'm just going to get started by tracing around the toe, and then around the heel. So you can see I've traced my heel and my toe of my boot, and now all you have to do is connect them through the middle, which honestly doesn't matter exactly how much material you leave here, because this doesn't do anything. All you need this for is to be structurally sound enough to hold the front and the back together, so don't skimp on it, but it doesn't really matter what you do. So the next step is we're going to start making our cuts with the jigsaw. So next we're just going to trace this heel. So this end here is the heel, and this is actually going to get doubled up. So it's going to be 1 inch thick. So we're just going to trace this so that we can double this piece up. So there's our tracing, and I'm just going to do a line straight across here. So all you have to make, the only part that's important again is that this curved part be correct. Once you get down here, it doesn't really have to be exact. So now, same thing again. We're just going to cut that out with the jigsaw. So to make the top piece, I just kind of am going to loosely trace the bottom. Doesn't really have to be exact. In fact, I'm just making mine a rectangle, and then I'm going to stop it like about 1 inch shy of the bottom piece, just so that I have some room to work. So something like that. And then I'm going to cut that out. Alright, so we've got our bottom piece that's going to clip into the binding, heel and toe. Then we've got our top piece that's going to strap to your foot. And then we've got our hinge, and that's just going to connect to the toe so that it pivots. So now all we got to do is put the hinge on. So at this point you just want to make sure that the hinge is on there straight, or else your binding is going to be kind of all cattywampus. That's really the only important part of this, though, so that kind of goes together more or less straight. And if you do it wrong, you can always fix it, so no big deal. have it. So this is what we've got so far. This is the heel, the toe, and then as you can see the hinge is right here on the toe. So this bottom piece is what's going to clip into the binding. This top piece is what is going to hopefully attach to my ski boot. So the next step is to take the binding off of this snowshoe and move it onto my adapter. So here is one completed binding adapter. I'm going to test it out, and if it works, then I'm just going to go ahead and put a coat of paint on it. But I want to give it a test before I go to the trouble of doing that. So the one downside of using the plywood is that if it gets wet around those edges, it kind of starts to peel apart. The reason I decided to go with plywood instead of just pine is obviously strength. You know, you don't have a lot of material here, so this will be a little stronger than it would have been if I just used a piece of pine. But the downside is that plywood kind of comes apart when it gets wet. So I'm just going to make sure I seal it really well so that that doesn't happen. The other thing I wanted to mention is that the cool thing about using the snowshoe binding here is that obviously the whole point of me doing this is to save money. So I don't have special Alpine touring boots. So, you know, it actually doesn't suck that much to walk up a mountain in just regular downhill ski boots. That's just what I'm running. Nothing special. But this gives me the options of I can either get my ski boot into this binding, or if I don't want to deal with that, I could just wear my hiking boots in these bindings and carry my ski boots in my backpack. So it leaves your options open, which I like. Alright, so here's our test. I'm going to go ahead and snap the binding, the adapter I mean, into the binding. So far so good. So this is kind of the moment of truth, and I've found that I actually can't push them in with my hand. I do have to stomp them in. Okay, so the adapter is in the binding. Let's get my foot in. Alright, so I've just got my regular old muck boot in the adapter, and as you can see, my foot sits a little bit far forward, so I might adjust the placement of the snowshoe binding on top of the adapter, but it does work. You can push along, and then you can lift your heel, so your heel is free. You're able to turn your foot. Now I'm just in my driveway, so the real moment of truth will be when I take these out on the mountain. But so far so good. I think I'm ready to give it that second trial run. So I've been at it for, I don't know, 15 minutes and everything seems to be working great. Making good time. Nothing seems that awkward, and everything's holding up so far. So far so good. So I made it to the top, or as far as I was intending to make it, and bindings seem to have held up pretty well. Everything seems fine. I've thought of a couple small changes I might make to them just to streamline things a little bit, but honestly, they work pretty well. They held up this far, so that's a good sign. Duct tape skins held up great. They got me up the mountain, so all I have to do is make some reinforcements as far as how they actually attach to the ski, and I think I might be in business there too, so I'll stay tuned for a video on that. If I had trouble with anything, it was really my homemade duct tape skins, which I will fine tune a little more and then make a video on those because they got me up the hill. They had a couple of couple of issues, but they worked as intended other than one of them broke. And I think that I can reinforce it for next time, so stay tuned for another video on DIY climbing skins. But for now, I'm gonna clip in and go for a ride.